Long ago, in the land of Canaan, lived a young man named Joseph, the beloved son of Jacob. His story is one of betrayal, suffering, faith, forgiveness, and the mysterious, beautiful providence of God. Joseph was not like his brothers. He was young, thoughtful, and deeply loved by his father. Jacob gave him a beautiful coat, a sign of favor that stirred jealousy in the hearts of his older brothers. But the coat was not the only reason they envied him. Joseph had dreams. In one dream, sheaves of grain in the field bowed down to his sheaf. In another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed before him. These dreams were glimpses of God's plan, but to his brothers, they sounded like pride. Jealousy grew, resentment hardened, and one day, hatred took hold. When Joseph's father sent him to check on his brothers in the fields, they saw him coming from far away. "This is the dreamer," they said. "Come, let us kill him." But Reuben, the eldest, persuaded them not to shed blood. Instead, they threw Joseph into a dry pit, alone, abandoned, confused. Soon, a caravan of Ishmaelite traders passed by, and for 20 pieces of silver, Joseph was sold as a slave. His brothers dipped his coat in goat's blood and carried it home. Jacob believed his son was dead, and Joseph was carried far away to Egypt. It looked like the end of the dream, but it was only the beginning of God's work. Joseph was sold to a man named Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. Though Joseph was far from home, the Bible tells us something remarkable. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Because God was with him, everything Joseph did prospered. Potiphar trusted him with his entire household. But righteousness is often tested. Potiphar's wife fell in love with Joseph and tried to get him to sin. Joseph refused. Potiphar's wife lied to her husband and told him that Joseph had tried to mock her. Potiphar had Joseph thrown into prison, from favored son to slave to prisoner. Yet even there, the Lord was with Joseph. In prison, Joseph met two servants of Pharaoh, the cupbearer and the baker. Both had troubling dreams. Joseph told them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." God revealed the meaning. The cupbearer would be restored. The baker would die. Exactly as Joseph said, it happened. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him, but he was forgotten. 2 more years passed in silence. Sometimes God's promises seem delayed, but God is never late. One night, Pharaoh dreamed. 7 fat cows were eaten by 7 thin cows. 7 full ears of grain were swallowed by 7 withered ears. No one could explain it. Then the cupbearer remembered Joseph. Joseph was brought before Pharaoh. He said, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace." God revealed the meaning. 7 years of plenty were coming, then 7 years of famine. Joseph wisely advised storing grain during the plentiful years. Pharaoh recognized God's wisdom in Joseph and said, "Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God?" Joseph, once a slave and prisoner, was made ruler over Egypt. Joseph was called Zaphnath-Paneah and was given Asenath, the daughter of the priest of On, to wife. At 30 years old, the dreamer became a deliverer. The famine was severe across the land. In Canaan, Jacob's family felt the hunger pressing in. So Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to buy grain, all except Benjamin, the youngest, whom he could not bear to lose. When the brothers entered Egypt, they stood before the governor of the land and bowed with their faces to the ground. They did not know they were bowing before Joseph, but Joseph knew them. Years had passed. The boy they betrayed was now a ruler in Egypt. Power was in his hands. And in that moment, Joseph faced a quiet question of the soul. Had his brothers truly changed? Joseph spoke to them through an interpreter and treated them as strangers. He accused them of being spies. He questioned their story. "We are 12 brothers," they said. "One is no more, and the youngest remains with our father." At these words, Joseph's heart trembled, but his face remained firm. He placed them in prison for 3 days, not for revenge, but for revelation. On the third day he said, "If you are honest men, let one brother remain bound here, and go, bring your youngest brother to me." The brothers looked at one another in fear and whispered, "We are truly guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear." Joseph turned away and wept. For the first time he heard repentance in their voices. Yet the test was not finished. Joseph's brothers bought their corn, but the money was returned to their sacks. Simeon was kept in prison. When the brothers returned home, they told Jacob everything, but Jacob cried out in sorrow, "Joseph is gone! Simeon is gone! And now you would take Benjamin?" Only when the famine became unbearable did Jacob finally allow Benjamin to go. So the brothers returned to Egypt, this time with the youngest. They brought presents for the governor of the land and double the amount of money they had found in their sacks. When Joseph saw Benjamin, his full brother, his mother's son, emotion overwhelmed him. He hurried away to weep in private. Still, the test continued. Simeon was released, and Joseph prepared a feast for his brothers. He seated them in birth order, astonishing them, and he gave Benjamin 5 times more food than the others. Would jealousy rise again? Would they resent the favored son as they once resented Joseph? But this time, there was peace. So Joseph created one final test. He secretly placed his silver cup inside Benjamin's grain sack. After the brothers left, his servants pursued them and accused Benjamin of theft. The brothers tore their clothes in grief. They all returned to the city together. No one abandoned the younger brother. Then Judah stepped forward and offered the greatest proof of change. "Take me instead. Let the boy go free, lest I see the evil that would come upon my father." Years earlier, they had sold one brother to save themselves. Now one brother was willing to sacrifice himself to save another. The hearts of the brothers had truly changed, and Joseph could restrain himself no longer. Joseph revealed himself. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." His brothers were afraid, but Joseph spoke words of grace. "Do not be grieved, for God sent me before you to preserve life." What they meant for evil, God meant for good. Joseph embraced them one by one, tears turning into joy, guilt turning into forgiveness, broken family becoming whole again. Joseph sent for his father. When Jacob saw Joseph alive, his heart overflowed with joy. The family settled in the rich land of Goshen. God had preserved them, just as he promised Abraham long before. Years passed. Jacob died. The brothers feared Joseph might seek revenge, but Joseph wept and said, "Fear not. Am I in the place of God? You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to save many people alive." Joseph lived to see generations blessed through God's faithfulness, and before he died, he spoke one final promise. God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land. Even in death, Joseph believed in God's future deliverance. Joseph's life points to a greater story. Like Joseph, Jesus was beloved by his father, rejected by his brothers, sold for silver, suffered unjustly, yet through suffering brought salvation. What looked like defeat became deliverance. And the same God who guided Joseph's life is guiding yours. No pit is too deep. No prison is too dark. No delay is meaningless. Because God is working, even now, for good. The story of Joseph is not only about the past. It is a reminder for today. Trust God in the waiting, for He is writing a story of redemption.